What is going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Podium Pushers podcast with Justin and Brandon. We have potentially witnessed the greatest race of the season. The British Grand Prix never disappoints. We saw a Lando Norris home win. Nico Hulkenberg finally gets his podium, and so much more happened in this wet to dry race. It was incredible. We're here to talk about it. Brandon, how you feeling?
Feeling fantastic. Definitely best race of the year so far. And man, I'm just excited to talk about it.
We had gone through a bit of a dry spell of having banger races. I mean, we started out this year, we ended last year. Every race was fantastic. And then, we had some average races. And then Silverstone said, don't worry, I'm a classic track. It's iconic. I'll handle it, guys. Give you the best race of the year. It was wonderful. Let's get started with your one sentence rundown from the British Grand Prix.
My one sentence rundown is, man, what a day. Lando's home win. It was really just a great drive from Lando. Obviously, Oscar had the penalty, which kind of shook things up for the two of them, but Lando was there, ready to pick up the pieces, and he had a great race. Definitely won it fair and square, not just because of Oscar's penalty. So it was a fantastic day. Like we have mentioned time and time again, we love seeing home drivers do very well at their home Grand Prix. So it was awesome to see Lando.
Yeah, I mean, if there was ever a race to see Lando Norris win, it was this one. Seeing him in front of the home crowd, you could hear what it meant to him on his radio messages afterwards. Obviously, he had his own grandstand this weekend. That was awesome to see and see how much they got excited and got behind Lando. That was awesome. There has been a lot of, talk online that I've seen of people saying that Lando lucked into this win and Lando didn't deserve to win this race. And yes, it did look like Oscar Piastri was probably the quicker driver in the wet in those changeable conditions. Oscar Piastri drove away and had this massive lead. But then, he makes the mistake that gets him the penalty. Lando didn't do that. Max Verstappen was ahead of Lando Norris at that safety restart, kind of halfway bend it. Lando didn't do that. And so this was one of those races where we've made fun of Lando in the past for making a lot of mistakes. And this race, Lando was the one to keep it clean, keep a calm head, not make any mistakes. And I think he therefore deserved to take home this victory.
Yeah, I totally agree. And as far as Oscar driving away in the wet, you got to think about in those changeable conditions, visibility was awful. So Oscar had a clear track and the best visibility of anybody on the track at that point in time. So he had the sight and the confidence to be able to drive quicker than the drivers behind him did. So I think that also played a key factor in it as well. Obviously, when he's 13 seconds down the road, there's not a lot of spray hitting the driver behind him, but still it's in the air. And, that's a big advantage in those changeable conditions.
Yeah, I mean, especially when it's monsoon rain outside and you're still driving on the intermediate tires. That's a conversation for another day why the full wet tires never get used in Formula One. Hopefully, these new regulations, we have better wet tires. Speaking of Oscar Piastri, he received a 10-second penalty. Did Oscar Piastri deserve that 10-second penalty for his safety car incident? He did slow down quite a bit. In my mind, I don't think he was like, let me stomp on the brakes, make Max Verstappen run into the back of me or do something to mess with that. I truly think he was just trying to get some temperature into his tires, into his brakes, and he probably just overdid it. And, obviously, when the stewards are handing out penalties, they can see all the data that they need. And so something was there for them to say, yes, Oscar Piastri was guilty of this. With the spray, Max probably had very reduced visibility, and that would be why he overtook him. But 10 seconds, some could say it's too harsh. I mean, that's obviously they thought it was worth more than a 5, gave him a 10. I'm sad it wasn't a 5 just for the fact of that would have been an incredible finish because he came out 5.8 seconds behind Lando Norris. And so that would have been fantastic if it was just a 5. But I mean, I don't know. Obviously, I'm not the one that hands out the penalty. It is more risky in the wet with worse visibility. Do you think this penalty was fair?
I mean, I'm kind of in the same camp as you. I think it was probably warranted of a penalty. I don't think Oscar did anything intentional. The way he was kind of talking about the penalty on the radio and all that, I think he was just, like you said, trying to get temperature in the brakes, in the tires. He also had to slow down to let the safety car get into the pits. So, a lot of factors going on there, and he probably just misjudged things. But I do think 10 is a little harsh. I mean, it's not like Oscar has a history of doing this or history of being, an aggressive driver who tries to play these games to, get Max to overtake him and then call for Max to have a penalty on the radio or anything, like that. So,
Kind of
I mean,
sounds like
look, I
something
think,
George Russell did in Canada under the
eh,
safety car and received no penalty for.
hmm. Um, anyway, another conversation for another episode. But yeah, I think 10 was a little too harsh. I would have definitely liked it for it to be a 5. I feel like that would have been more fair, and obviously it would have been a fantastic finish to the race if it was just a 5-second penalty. But that's okay. We move on.
Yeah, but obviously Oscar was closing him down at the end and then had that mistake where he went off one more time and lost all that ground he had gained up. So he still had a chance to close it down at the end, made another mistake, and so that's just more evidence that Lando Norris did deserve this victory. I think it really just comes down to two things. One, it was raining outside, and so visibility was reduced. I think if it's not raining as much or as hard or at all even, Max sees that Oscar is slowing down, doesn't overtake him, nothing is made of it, no penalty is given out. And then two, Oscar Piastri isn't that experienced restarting races from the lead under the safety car, much less experienced restarting from the lead under the safety car in the wet. And so I think that played a part of it too. If Oscar Piastri just doesn't have that much experience being the lead car out of safety car restart in the wet. And so he, felt like that is something that he needed to do. I don't think it was intentional to cause a penalty like you said. It was just a combination of it was raining, Max couldn't see, Oscar doesn't have much experience. You put those together, Max overtakes him, attention gets drawn to it, penalty gets handed out.
Yeah, that's how it goes. And at the end of the day, Oscar did his best to try to drive that penalty away. Wasn't enough, but like you said at the end, he was closing it down, and um, maybe something could have happened if he hadn't made that mistake. But oh well.
Yeah, did his best on the radio to try to get a reverse too. Him talking about how it wasn't fair. If you guys don't think it's fair either, maybe we should swap back and race. McLaren was never going to do that, but I do think that shows Oscar Piastri's championship mentality of trying to do everything he can to get that edge. A lot of drivers probably wouldn't make that radio call, but the fact that he would just throw it out there and see what would happen, probably knowing himself that he wasn't going to get the swap, just continues to reinforce that Oscar has the mentality of someone who will fight for the championship. I thought that was great to see as well.
Yeah, I did too. I thought it was kind of funny, honestly, just Oscar being like, you know what? I'm gonna throw this out there. If it lands, great. If not, whatever, no harm. But can't fault him for trying that. So
Just the way his voice sounded when he was like, I don't think that was fair. If you guys don't think it was fair, maybe it was so funny. Like that radio cracked me up. He's racing at 200 miles per hour, things like that. That was so funny. Let's move on to my one sentence rundown, which is that Nico Hulkenberg finally scores a podium. What a race from Nico Hulkenberg. P19 to P3. Absolutely insane. I was going for a run when I was watching this race. I was on the treadmill, had it propped up, and I saw him make that move on Lance Stroll. And immediately I was like, yeah, not going to happen. He's going to lose it. Something's going to happen. Lewis Hamilton wasn't that far behind. Surely I thought Lewis was going to come through and pass him, but he didn't. He held on. He won, or he took P3. Absolutely incredible performance from Nico Hulkenberg. What did you make of that race from Nico?
I mean, I was just holding my breath for the last 20 laps or however long it was. Ultimately when I was watching it, Nico was in P4, Lance was in P3. I was like, it would be great to see Lance get a podium here. That would be huge for Aston Martin, huge for Lance's confidence, which he hasn't seemed to have a lot of in the last like 4 years. And I was like, you know what, it'd be even better for Nico to get that podium, and he sure did. And man, just watching him celebrate and just soak in the moment, it was just awesome. Really, really happy for him. And this is one of those moments in Formula One where it's like, this is why it's a special sport. So it was amazing to watch.
Yeah, obviously the celebrations for Lando winning his home race were incredible, but just seeing Sauber celebrate with Nico Hulkenberg was probably my favorite part of the race. Seeing them all rush him and jump up and down and celebrate, that was incredible. I think the funniest part about it is that he waited this long in his career to get a trophy. He finally gets one, and it's made out of Legos. And they hand him the trophy, and he almost looks down at it, and he's like, "What is this?" I think that's hilarious that he got a Lego trophy for his first podium. Hopefully, not his last podium. The team is about to become Audi. Can Nico Hulkenberg deliver more performances like this when the team becomes Audi? We were kind of saying when he made this move, he's going to have a year of pain this year, but hopefully somehow Audi enters the sport and they've been preparing for this and they're a great team. He's had some great performances this year. He's always been a solid driver. So if Audi deliver the car, maybe we see some more Nico Hulkenberg podiums.
I think it's definitely possible. It really just comes down to how good is the Audi car going to be next year. And I mean, I think Nico's the driver to be able to drag it up there on the podium if there is an opportunity. Obviously, he showed that this weekend, so I think it's definitely possible. And you would think that Audi has obviously known that they're going to join the sport for years now, and they've been preparing. They've had the regulations and all that to be able to design a car for years and not have the pressure necessarily of having to focus on delivering a race winning car at the same time as developing a new car. So we'll see what happens, but I definitely think it's possible.
Yeah,
I would
we
love
haven't had the most confidence in Audi thinking that they're going to be incredible. But I mean, who knows? They've got some momentum going into this year. They've made some changes with people within the organization that seem to have them on the right track. Obviously, Jonathan Wheatley appears to be a very good hire for them at the moment. And so maybe maybe they're cooking in the background. Audi could have some performances. They definitely have the driver lineup to do it. I do hope that they keep Gabriel Bortoleto. I think he's got a lot more potential in him. Obviously, did not show it this weekend with bending it fairly early in the race, but I do think he's got some raw speed and could perform well. But obviously, Nico Hulkenberg is going to be the foundation of that team, and I think he can deliver if they give him the car. We'll just have to wait and see. Nothing's really guaranteed with Audi. We're going into new regulations, so they've got as good of a chance as anybody to deliver the car and be fighting at the front. So we'll have to see what happens there. Moving back to the championship. Does Lando Norris have all the momentum in the championship right now? Cuts even more into Oscar Piastri's lead. It's down to single digits. As we officially are at the halfway point of the season, only 12 rounds left. Is Lando Norris reclaiming momentum in this championship?
I mean, right now it looks like he is, and I think Lando may have turned a corner. Um, he gets a lot of hate from it seems like everybody about the way that he drives, and people are making excuses for his wins. But I mean, these last couple wins that he's had have been fantastic, including this one. And I think Oscar, um, you know, has taken advantage of opportunities in his own right, but Lando's showing that he's not gonna roll over and let Oscar drive away with the championship. So um, I think Lando has the momentum right now, and I'm just excited to see, when we get down to the end of the season, where it stands, and maybe we'll have another season-ending race where the championship is still up for grabs. I think it's definitely possible.
Oh, I sure hope we do. That would be absolutely incredible. There's only 8 points in it after halfway, so it certainly could happen. Obviously, we talk about this every week because we do a podcast and we have to talk about something in Formula One. But I almost feel like there is too much conversation about who's the new championship favorite. Like, they're both really good drivers driving in the clear, dominant car. I mean, after this weekend, Max is officially out of it. There's no way in my mind that he can win. He took that P5, was in a full dry setup for Monza in the wet at Silverstone. It was not good for Max. And so he's out of it. So it's between these two drivers in the same team in the same quick car. They're both great drivers. It's like 50-50, maybe 51-49 to Oscar because he's still got the lead and has probably still had the better year in totality. But it could be either one of them right now. And we can talk about momentum, especially because Lando Norris seems to be such a momentum-based driver. But as far as the favorites go, I don't want to say that there's a favorite. There's 12 rounds left. There's 8 points in it. Like, it could be either one of them, and that's incredibly exciting for the rest of the year.
Absolutely, and I do agree with that. There are a lot of people who I see are like, oh, Lando's the favorite now. Oscar's still the favorite. All this stuff. It's like honestly, we probably won't know who's going to win the championship till, if things keep going like this, probably the last, at the earliest, like the second to last race. So, in my opinion, so we'll see. But I'm not too worried about who's the favorite. I'm just worried about watching what happens. So,
Yeah, I mean, we'll just let it all unfold and talk about it once it does. Man, you know who's not the favorite? Freaking Ferrari and Charles Leclerc, especially when it rains. Why are Ferrari and Charles Leclerc so bad in the wet? I honestly cannot remember a time that they have been good in the wet. 2019, Germany, Charles Leclerc crashes. Last year, Silverstone, same crap in the wet. Last year, Canada, he's getting lapped because he's on the wrong tire. Like, I cannot think back in my mind to a time that Charles Leclerc and Ferrari were good in the wet. What is going on with them?
I really don't have an answer for that. And I wish it did because I would tell them and then maybe they would perform a little bit better. But yeah, Charles just doesn't. I don't know. I don't want to say he's not equipped to drive in the wet because obviously he's an amazing racing driver, and I think there are just a lot of other drivers that maybe have a lot more experience. You talk about Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton. Both of those guys are fantastic in the wet. Obviously Oscar did great this weekend as well. But yeah, I don't know what's going on there, and I think a lot of it is the car. If they could just get a car that is easier to drive, more balanced. I mean, you heard Lewis talk about it a lot this weekend about how the car was just horrible to drive in the conditions. So I don't exactly know what the solution is, but I do think a more balanced car is probably a good place to start for them. So
Yeah, I mean, we know that Charles Leclerc is driving on like the ragged edge of what is possible in that Ferrari. Every single lap, he's trying to get the most out of it. And I think that can become a detriment sometimes in the rain, where that edge becomes a little bit more difficult to find. And sometimes he goes a little over it too far. And so I think, there probably is some blame on Charles Leclerc of saying maybe he does push it a little too far in the wet instead of settling for a good result instead of going for great. I also think some of it is probably Ferrari find a way to mess up the strategy every single time. It feels like this time they did it right away coming in from P6. Obviously, with hindsight, that was not the correct move to do. And so I think like one thing goes wrong, and then like Charles is driving really hard to try to make up for it. And so another thing goes wrong, and then they try to make up for it with strategy, and that messes up, and another thing goes wrong. So then Charles is pushing even more, and he goes over the edge again. I think it's just like a snowball of Ferrari can't do strategy. Charles trying to make up for the bad car, and it just turns out bad, worse and worse and worse.
yeah. Yeah, and I do think that maybe he's just accustomed to poor strategy calls and having to like drive to try to make up for that. So it just doesn't, from the get go, it doesn't set him up for success because, as the rain's falling and they're starting the race on intermediate tires, Charles can't be like thinking like, okay, yeah, this is going to go well. He's probably already like pre-stressed a little bit going into the race, which probably doesn't help his, driving.
Yeah, and there's like a 1% chance, like a small part of my mind that thinks Ferrari designs a car and then they showed up to Australia this year and they're like, "Oh yeah, it rains sometimes." And their car is just not designed for the wet at all. They just designed a fast car in the dry and then they're like, "Oh no, sometimes we have to drive in water." And so I think there's a small that's probably not what happens, but with how it always seems like Ferrari drives in the wet, that's certainly a possibility it seems like.
Yeah, definitely. Who knows what's going on there?
I just want Ferrari to be good again. That's all I want. They're just wasting Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton. I mean, he could not win another Formula One race with the way that Ferrari's going right now. Hoping that they figured out the new regulations so we can see some success from them. Let's talk about Max Verstappen. He did not have the British Grand Prix from pole that he wanted. Has Max checked out mentally from Red Bull? Obviously, all of the rumors swirling about him going to Mercedes and him kind of answering those questions a little differently this weekend. He went the whole I have a contract with Red Bull route, not I'm definitely driving for Red Bull route. So a little different there. Last week when Kimi crashed into him, he was like, "Oh, it's fine. It's okay. Don't worry about it." He would never have that attitude if he was in the championship fight. This weekend, he was so happy for Nico Hulkenberg. Doesn't matter that I halfway bend it. That's okay. P5 is great. I'm happy. Is Max done with Red Bull with that attitude?
I don't know, maybe it does definitely seem like a shift in attitude from Max Verstappen. Um, and the last time we heard somebody say, I have a contract with Red Bull with Sergio Perez last year, and look where he is right now. He's at home sipping on a margarita in Mexico, um, not enjoying his contract with Red Bull. So maybe we'll see Max in a Mercedes. That would be absolutely wild if Toto can pull that off. Um, do feel bad for whatever driver will get booted from Mercedes. Don't know which one it'll be. I've seen arguments for both. I could see either way that it happens, but yeah, I don't know. It's a different Max Verstappen than I'm used to seeing, and the rumors are really, really strong. I will say that. I just keep seeing more and more sources reporting the same thing, and that's usually an indicator that something's going on. So,
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Max is looking at things behind the scenes. There's no way the Max Verstappen camp is settling for what they're seeing at Red Bull right now and not exploring other options. I don't think he's necessarily fully checked out from Red Bull right now. I think he just understands he's out of the title fight. He still wants to fight for wins and be competitive, obviously, and you still see that competitive spirit in him. He was upset on the radio at Oscar after he had that half spin, which probably was caused by losing all his tire temps and all that things. At least played a part in it. Obviously, Max has some blame as well, but I think he understands he's not going to win the title, and so whether that means he's going actively ready to leave Red Bull or just looking at other things, there's probably something going on behind the scenes. Let's be honest, it would be George Russell that loses his seat. There's no way Toto puts Max and George in the same team. And also, you just said Lewis Hamilton can leave so you could sign Kimi Antonelli. There's no way you bin him off after a year just for that. There's no way that happens.
yeah, that's true. I mean, it would be sad to see George leave Mercedes though, because I mean, he was a Mercedes junior from the beginning. Kind of put all his trust in Mercedes, and they've delivered, great cars for him to drive. But would have loved to see him. I mean, we're talking like he's already gone, but would love to see him be able to fight for a championship in a Mercedes car because he has given so much to that team, and the prospect of him kind of swapping with Max and driving a Red Bull is kind of crazy, but maybe we'll see it happen. Who knows?
Yeah, the old George Russell Yuki Tsunoda combination of Red Bull would be absolutely insane. We've been putting out polls on our YouTube channel asking for grades of races. So if you haven't been voting on those, be sure to check them out and make sure you do. This week we had the British Grand Prix. You already know our feelings of it. I would give it an A. Brandon, how would you rate it?
I'd also give it an A. Definitely the best race of the year, and seeing some of these results from you guys is a little concerning, but we're
Yeah,
about to talk about it, so.
the fans gave it an A as well, but only 65% of you guys gave it an A, 25% gave it a B, and then 5% each for a C and a D. What are we doing? Who is voting for a C or a D with this? This was an incredible race. Lando Norris home win. Nico Hulkenberg on the podium. Changeable conditions. Maybe those people, are Max fans or Lewis fans that didn't get the result they want, maybe. But this was the best race of the year. What are we talking about here, guys?
Yeah, I mean, C or D is absolutely crazy. B, I could see an argument for. I don't agree with it, but yeah, I don't know.
Hey, that's all right. We love the sport. We loved this race. Everyone's entitled to their own opinions, even if they're incorrect. We're giving it an A. The fans technically agreed and gave it an A as well. So glad we're all on the same page there. We made some predictions for the British Grand Prix, and my oh my, am I just on a roll? I'm feeling good about it. Last week I closed the gap down. It was 28 to 26 going into the weekend. Podium pusher of the weekend, I said Ollie Behrman, which was incorrect, and I'm just like heartbroken about it because he had a great qualifying. Except he decided to completely ignore red flags in practice and do a practice pit lane entry and then puts it in the wall and gets a 10 place grid drop. So he goes to P18, had the pace, but has an incident with his teammate, ends up P11, one spot off points. So what could have been for Ollie Behrman this weekend, honestly, just kind of fell away from him.
Yeah, it was a complicated weekend for Ollie to say the least. But yeah, I mean, the positives are he showed good pace, but I definitely think it was not enough to get a podium pusher of the weekend point. And my podium pusher of the weekend was George Russell. Kind of a similar race for George Russell, similar in the sense that he was everywhere and nowhere all at the same time, and just kind of ended up with an okay result. But yeah, definitely not good enough for podium push of the weekend as well. So
Yeah, when he came in after the formation lap, I was like, George Russell's either going to win this race or finish last. He ends up P10, scores a point. Obviously, hindsight is 2020. Insane to pit from P4 on the formation lap to put on slicks. Like that's something you do if you got knocked out in Q1 and you maybe want to try something like try with Kimi Antonelli maybe who's a little further down the grid, but to come in from P4 and try that just seemed a little unnecessary to me.
yeah, I agree. I mean, that was kind of my reaction when I saw him do that. I was like, man, that's just so risky. And we're gonna find out if it works or not. Either, like you said, win the race or last place. So
Yeah, and
that's it.
then as soon as Charlie Leclerc and Ferrari follows him in, you're like, oh, this is the wrong call. Guaranteed. If Ferrari's doing this is the wrong thing, Georgia's
Yeah.
not going to have a good weekend. That's unfortunate. Backmarker of the weekend, I said Pierre Gasly, which was incorrect. Solid race from Pierre. Ends up in P6, making moves on the last lap to get around Lance Stroll and get one more position. I mean, he's hauling that Alpine. Obviously, Franco crashed out in Q1 and didn't even get to start the race. But Q3 from Pierre, finishing up in the points. Solid weekend from him, and maybe a reminder to never predict him as back marker ever again.
Yeah. Yeah. Whenever we do that, Pierre seems to have a solid weekend, even if the Alpine is nowhere. My back mark of the weekend, I went with Haas, and I think it's definitely worthy of the point. We already talked about Ollie's weekend. Esteban had a uh, pretty good weekend as well. Not as good as Ollie in qualifying, but he had a good race. He had a couple incidents, crashed
He had two
into his
crashes. He got
teammate,
knocked out in
and
Q1, crashed into his teammate, crashed into Liam Lawson. That's a
yeah.
horrible race for Esteban
I
Ocon.
I mean, yeah, not a good race necessarily, but you know, so back mark of the weekend for sure.
Yeah, I was like, good enough to get you back mark of the weekend. No points from the team. They crash into each other. Ollie Brandon gets a 10th place penalty. Esteban Ocon out in Q1. No points. That's a tough weekend for Haas right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it was good that Esteban didn't like crash himself out of the race. But
Yeah, is what it is what it is. Poll predictions, I said Lando Norris, which was incorrect.
and I also said Lando Norris, which is incorrect.
Yeah, great pole lap for Max Verstappen. Unfortunately, let him to be a sitting duck on Sunday, so that was unfortunate. P3, I said George Russell, which was incorrect.
In P3, I said Oscar Piastri, which is incorrect.
P2, I said Oscar Piastri, which was correct.
And P2, I said Lando Norris, which was incorrect.
And in P1, I said Lando Norris, which was correct.
And in P1, I said George Russell, which was incorrect.
Yep. Our one push in prediction, I said that the driver leading after turn one would not win the Grand Prix. And as soon as Max put it on pole, I said, praise God, I'm getting this point. Max leads after turn one, does not win the race. That is a point for me.
And I said we see a British front row lockout in qualifying. It was looking entirely possible, right up there until the end, but it's okay. It was still a great race.
Yeah, you had a second row lockout with Lando Norris and George Russell. So it was close, but did not happen there. Unfortunately, the fans at P1 Lando said Lando P1, which is correct. I'm not even going to read the rest of his podium predictions. That doesn't matter. He gets the point for Lando Norris finishing P1 at Crunchy Frog 250. Hamilton wins, which was incorrect. And at Daniel underscore Marsh underscore Haas double points for the 4th of July. Honestly, could not have been more incorrect. That means our score is 29 to 29. We are all tied up. I have come back all the way. We are at the halfway point of the season, 12 rounds left, and we are tied in our predictions championship.
Couldn't have asked for a better point in the season halfway through. So I'm excited for this championship as well.
Yo, we're at 29-29. People will be watching the real F1 championship battle, but we know this is the one that really counts. Let us know in the comments down below who you think's gonna win. And if you think one of us can make it to 60, we're almost there. I feel like if we make it to 60, that would be an absolutely incredible achievement from us this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Correcting 60 things, correctly predicting 60 things over the course of a season. Fantastic.
Yeah, it
And
just means we know wheel here on the Podium Pusher podcast. If we know one thing, it is wheel knowledge. That is for sure. That is all we've got to talk about the British Grand Prix before we get out of here. Brandon, what are your parting podium thoughts?
I'm sad that we have a little bit of a break, but I'm excited for Spa. Spa is a fantastic track. Last year, it delivered an amazing race that included anything you could have asked for. So I'm looking forward to this one. Max also loves Spa, so maybe he'll win. Who knows?
But they just need to show up with the same setup they had this week. It might actually work in Spa with all those straights. It might actually be what they need. So certainly cannot count out Max Verstappen. It is a lovely track. Yes, we have a break. I'm sad, but we're not going anywhere. Don't you worry. We will have plenty of content for you guys over that break to help you miss Formula One just a little bit less. As always, thank you for watching or listening to this episode of the Podium Pushers podcast. It means the world to us that we get to talk to you guys about Formula One. That's incredible. Before you go, be sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, do all of the things. We will see you next week for some kind of break content. Don't you worry. But until then, have a great day and God bless.
See ya.